is up in relation to exploitative practices for home insurance and motorists. For too long, the insurance industry has been able to price gouge its customers. Most people believe that their insurance premium is based on how likely they are to make a claim and how much that claim would cost their insurer. But that isn't the whole story. In November, the central bank found that insurance prices have risen by 35% in the past decade, despite the cost of claims falling by 9%. We know that insurance companies are engaging in a price gouging practice called dual pricing to charge customers much higher prices than the actual costs of their policies. It involves the use of complex models to identify customers who are likely to renew and then charge them with the highest prices possible before they're tempted to switch to a competitor. So instead of rewarding you for your loyalty, they increase your premium in the knowledge that you are more likely to renew than to switch. That is the loyalty penalty. Take Ray, for example. Ray received a renewal quote from Liberty Insurance for €1,420 for his car insurance, only to be offered a premium of €680 for the exact same policy with the exact same provider when he went online. Overcharged by 109%, €740. That is the loyalty premium. That is what we are going to ban in this House. In September 2019, I wrote to the Governor of the Central Bank requesting an investigation into the practice of dual pricing. And after meeting with the Governor, the Central Bank agreed to carry out an investigation into my complaint that I submitted. In January, the Central Bank began its investigation of last year, and its interim report in December confirmed what we had said in our major complaint. That is that dual pricing is endemic right across the insurance market, that it affects more than 7 in 10 Irish policyholders, with many being overcharged hundreds of euros every single year. While the insurance industry has been allowed to rip off Irish customers, action has been taken elsewhere. Between 2014 and 2017, 20 US states prohibited the practice of dual pricing, including California, New York, Florida and many more. These bans were recommended by the American Association of Insurance Commissioners, who found that the use of dual pricing unfairly discriminated and called for the practice to be banned. In their own words, they said, two insurance customers having the same risk profile should be charged the same premium for the same coverage. And that is the principle of fairness which this legislation is based on and built upon. In Britain, the Financial Conduct Authority began its own investigation into this practice in 2018. It published its final report in September. Its findings were stark. Its solution was clear: to ban dual pricing. The British regulator found that in 2018 alone, dual pricing resulted in 6 million policyholders being overcharged a combined €1.4 million. They also concluded that dual pricing distorted competition, while others, including the industry and unfortunately including the junior minister with responsibility for insurance, have argued that a ban on dual pricing would undermine competition and deter new entrants. The British regulator, the FCA, found the very opposite to be the case. In their own words, they say, this type of price discrimination has a negative effect on competition. While removing dual pricing, they say, would improve the nature and intensity of competition. And for the benefit of the junior minister, I will quote them. They say this would mean firms competing in a more effective and innovative way, which would lead to lower overall costs for supplying insurance, more intense competition, and ultimately lower average prices paid by consumers. The British regulator has responded by announcing it will ban dual pricing this year. Irish consumers deserve no less. My insurance bill will ban this price gouging activity. It will ban dual pricing by requiring insurance providers to use only rating factors directly linked to the risk to be insured, so that renewing customers can no longer be charged artificially high prices based on their likeliness to renew, their economic background, their spending patterns or any other trait not linked to risk. It will increase transparency in how your premium is priced. Whether you receive your quote or premium from an insurance company, Whenever you receive that, the insurer will be required to tell you the rating factor used to calculate the price. How much of the price is to cover expected cost of claims, how much is to cover the cost of servicing, how much is to feed the insurance company's profits. This bill will ensure that transparency. Crucially, it will empower the central bank to draw up the regulations that will govern this ban, using the expertise of the central bank to remove this practice from the insurance market. Some may have concerns in this House that the central bank, not the Dáil, are best positioned to determine how dual pricing is removed from the insurance market, and this legislation answers those concerns. It will require the central bank to provide and produce a code of practice which will assist the courts and the Financial Services and Pensions Ombudsman where an insurance company has broken these new laws, and it will be required to publish an annual report assessing the industry's compliance with the legislation. Where an insurance company continues to use price gouging practice against customers, the central bank will have the power to sanction them. The legislation will reduce prices for consumers who for too long have been ripped off by the insurance industry. The Financial Conduct Authority in Britain found that a ban on dual pricing in the British market would bring real benefits to consumers, saving them between €4.8 billion and €12.9 billion in the next decade through lower prices. Using a data set of 17 million observations across 6 million unique insurance policies, the FCA have modelled what a ban on dual pricing would look like, and they have found that a ban on dual pricing would reduce insurance premiums by up to 27% for homeowners who renewed up to 10 times and up to 34% for motorists who have renewed that same tenure. This legislation provides for the same remedy, to ban this price gouging practice. Its effects would be the same, reducing prices for Irish consumers, and the Minister for State again has claimed that this legislation will prohibit discounts on insurance. Let me be clear, he obviously doesn't understand the legislation or the price remedy to be introduced here, or indeed what is happening across the water on which this legislation has been built upon. It will do no such thing. This legislation addresses the discriminatory practices of the insurance industry in the digital age. As the International Association of Insurance Supervisors have warned, the growing use of complex algorithms and rapidly expanding ability of insurers to access more data creates risks for consumers. It demands a response from legislators and regulators. As they noted in the issue paper in March 2020, pricing algorithms are now being applied to new sources, including online media data, such as web searches, online buying behaviour, social media activity accessed from third-party sources, including search engine providers such as Google and social media platforms such as Facebook. This reality was also underlined by EIOPA, the European regulator, who in 2019, where they noted in the thematic review that firms using new data sources for pricing and underwriting, including web searches, online purchases, social media activities, job career information, bank accounts and credit card data accessed from third-party sources. That is the vista before us. The question is it ethical? Is it transparent? It definitely is not. This legislation responds back to the risks posed by pricing models that discriminate and use personal data without the knowledge of consumers. This legislation will ban dual pricing. It will end discrimination and bring transparency to setting prices. It will radically shape up the insurance market and do so for the better, increasing competition, reducing time and money for consumers spend switching. Crucially, it will reduce prices. The legislation requires the industry to do what should be a given, to price fairly and to price transparency. I welcome the fact that the Consumers Association of Ireland and Brokers Ireland have supported this legislation. I also welcome the fact that the Government is not opposing this legislation, but I am disappointed that they are putting a stay in it for 9 months. While they may delay this action, they will not hold it back. I
want to thank my Sinn Féin colleague Pearse Doherty for the painstaking work that he has done in taking on the insurance industry. He has done this in a hostile environment where those who fiercely defend the status quo, which allows insurance industry to dictate how much and how often they demand money from policyholders. Unfortunately, this has been facilitated by compliant governments who have adopted the role as spectator rather than legislator. Insurance is a legal requirement. Preventing policyholders from being robbed should also be a legal requirement. Today this bill provides the opportunity for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party and others to stand up to the vested interests in the insurance industry. It's time to make a stand for drivers and for homeowners who are being fleeced by price gouging. Many of these are your elderly constituents. Many of them are already marginalised because they don't have the technological know-how, the time or the broadband connectivity to shop around. They are depending on us to stand up for them by demanding transparency, fairness in the insurance industry. They are depending on us to end the rip-off. They are depending on us to wrestle the raw data from those who have fought so hard to protect the system that enables insatiable greed to run rife. And when I say that, I remember Dorothy Dowling, who, when I was on the Finance Committee, fought so hard to get this raw data. Dual pricing is just one of the practices that allows this greed to use policyholders' information to extract maximum amount of money from hard-pressed individuals and families. Yes, a fundamental reform of the insurance industry is long overdue. This bill is another step by Sinn Féin in the right direction. Leave the party politics behind just for today and put our constituents first. It is time to abandon dual pricing.
First of all, I want to commend Pearse Doherty on his work on this bill and indeed his tireless work in respect of the whole insurance industry and holding into account in respect of all of this. And it's in stark contrast, I think, to what the government have done, not just this government but previous governments, in respect of the whole insurance rip-off that we experience across the length and breadth of the country. Young drivers have particularly been punished over recent years, and indeed it is an ongoing problem. But this particular issue, where we see that people are basically punished for their loyalty, that when they remain with the company and are loyal to that company, that they are continually price gouged in respect of that. And it's an issue that really needs to be dealt with, and this piece of legislation deals with that issue. I had a constituent that I spoke to this week who told me that his insurance was €785 when he got the price for his renewal. Yet he went on the website and it was €550. His driving in the last 12 months was only 22% of what it had been in a normal year because of the lockdown. And his argument was, surely my insurance and the insurance of everybody should be gone way down, because if people are not on the roads, if people are not driving as much, then there are clearly not going to be as many accidents or as many claims. But yet the insurance industry has pushed prices up for people like this. It is an absolute scandal. I heard the Minister on the radio this morning trying to claim that somehow or other this piece of legislation was going to do the opposite, that it was going to put insurance companies into a position where they would not be able to give discounts. They don't give discounts, Minister. What the insurance companies do is they assault people to get more money out of them for a service that they have been provided for in the previous past. So I think really what we need to see here is we need to see the government step up to the mark, not just with this particular piece of legislation, but with the whole insurance industry. We need to deal with this in the round. Ireland has a reputation across the world as being a country where we are overpriced in many, many sectors, but particularly in the insurance sector. I welcome that the government is not going to oppose this legislation. However, putting a stay on it is like putting a stay on people's ambition to try and do better. And we can't do that. We cannot allow a situation where we have got the insurance industry continuing to punish people for doing the right thing. So I would appeal to the Minister to withdraw the amendment, to deal with this right now and sort out people's problems in regard to insurance across the length and breadth of the country.
To conclude, David,
first of all, I want to commend Pearse Doherty for the work that he has done in this area over a long period of time. These, Minister, are not new issues. The issue of dual pricing and price gouging has been with us for a long time. These are very unfair, in fact toxic practices that have been carried out by greedy insurance companies for a long time. Pearse Doherty and others have shone a spotlight on this issue for months and for years. But the reality is, Minister, that your government has done nothing. Customers are being ripped off every single day. Car insurance customers are being ripped off. Home insurance customers are being ripped off. Small businesses are being ripped off. In fact, a number of them had to take insurance companies to court because the government failed in their duty to protect them and to protect citizens. People say to me all of the time that they're being ripped off, and why does the government do nothing? Because the political will isn't there, because in my view the government are protecting and shielding the greedy insurance companies. And increasingly they say to me, unless and until we have a finance minister like Pierce Doherty, we're not going to see these issues changed. The reality is, Minister, that this can be resolved through political will. The Taoiseach, over the last number of weeks and months, posted a number of social media videos, beating his chest and saying that he is going to take on the insurance industry and he is going to deal with some of these issues. Well, where is he today? Where's the government today? Where's Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil today when you put a stay on this bill? A bill that can actually deal with these issues in the here and the now. You want to kick the can down the road again, and people will see that, and they will see why. Because you do not want to challenge the greedy insurance companies. Minister, you know, because the evidence has been presented time and again by Teachta Doherty, by the Finance Committee and by lots of consumer organisations, that on a daily basis there are any number of examples of people who are being ripped off. And they feel badly let down by government parties who are simply not prepared to put the interests of ordinary consumers and customers and citizens first, and are taking a back seat and allowing those people and small businesses to take court cases and to be the ones that lead the charge, and people like Teachta Doherty, while the government sits back and does nothing. It's unacceptable, Minister, and you should be supporting and backing this bill.
I want to commend my colleague Pierce Doherty for bringing forward this bill and for having it in him to take on the insurance industry and to call stop on the insurance rip-off. And I want to just come back on something that the Minister has said. The Minister has chosen to engage in semantics instead of dealing with the extensive research on this price gouging practice. Dual pricing, differential pricing and price optimisation refer to the same practice, and I am very disappointed at the government's amendment kicking the can down the road. And I hadn't heard the Minister talk about the reality here, and there needs to be a reality check here. Drivers are being forced to pay these high prices because in rural Ireland in particular there are simply no other options other than to drive for essential journeys, and this practice is wrong and it must be banned. It has been banned in other countries and this must be done here without delay. What other industry targets customers for being loyal but isn't working out well for them, because the insurance business is one lucrative business, and there's no denying that this practice is happening here and we need to deal with it, and we need a government to step up to the mark and deal with it immediately and not simply kick the can down the road. I had one man tell me that he got his car renewal quote. The company told him that it would be $1,500, then another company told him it would be $750, and another told him it was going to be $540. And is there any reason for that? Of course not. It's just a handy way for the big insurance company to make profit on the back of ordinary workers and families. And the reality is that the costs are absolutely extortionate. And I had one woman contact me and she told me that her daughter is starting to learn to drive, and she said, "We've been trying to get our daughter insurance quotes as a new driver. We may as well not bother. We have $5,500 to insure their child as a provisional driver to get experience." Who has that? Even when she passes her test, it doesn't get much cheaper. It's $3,500, and how on earth can insurance companies justify their prices? Achas billa fear hábhachtach í seo atá curtha os cór na dála inniu, tá sé thar am dún déile le J. Freisal, ní tionscail bit eile an a ghearan pinos customary mar go si dílis go cholacht. Agus ní chóir gomach sé de chead I cholachtaí price amháin luar an bhón agus price umlán difriúil a chóirt nar dhéantar fistruchan lína caafar rud a cinnt dhéanamh faoi seo agus tá impú an rialtas takeú leis an mille seo.
Donnelly.
I'd also like to thank Deputy Pierce Doherty for his absolute determination to challenge this industry and his consistency in defending every one of us who have car and home insurance, and especially those who are older and who are vulnerable. I listened to the Minister's speech, and what have we heard? And to be honest with you, I was absolutely incredulous. He talked about underpricing and overpricing, as if an insurance company is going to ring somebody up and offer them a product that they're going to lose money on. Absolutely incredulous to stand here in this convention centre and say something like that. What we're talking about here is kicking the can down the road, and we're talking about protecting the insurance companies over its customers. So what is being proposed? And I think it's important that we outline what's being proposed. Ban the use of dual pricing in home and motor insurance. Require insurance companies to inform their consumers of the rating factors that they have used to calculate their premiums and the amounts to be paid as a result of each rating factor. Require the central bank to draw up and enforce the regulations that will govern the ban. Require the central bank to draw up a code of practice that can be used against insurance companies by the financial ombudsman in the courts, and allow the central bank to sanction insurance companies that continue to use dual pricing. Everyone has outlined here today somebody in their constituency, and I have two that I want to bring to your attention. A young man who looked for insurance, he was first quoted €1,900. And when he told him, he said, I have Pearse Doherty on the case here. They came back to him the same day and offered him €1,290 for his insurance. Another man who was 7 years with his insurance company, he was quoted €935. When he went and he argued and he demanded why it had gone up to such an extent, it was reduced to €640. That's not just two people's experience, that's all our experiences. Every person who gets an insurance quote, the first thing they do is they ring that insurance company because it's gone up to such an extent, and they demand why. Why am I having to ring you? Why am I having to demand of you that you reduce my insurance premium because it has gone up for no reason whatsoever? And the reason is price gouging. And it's really important that this legislator, this convention centre, this government absolutely defends the people, not the insurance companies. And I ask to change your mind, to withdraw your amendment and to support this bill.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I want to start by commending my colleague, Dr. Pearse Doherty, not just for this bill here today, but for the tireless work that he has put in over the last number of years on this issue. And Minister, I note in your contribution you said you had some concerns. I think it's very regrettable that your concerns, as you outlined them, were only really for insurance companies and insurance providers. I think that anyone watching this debate would far prefer it if you came in here and said you had even a small concern for customers. So that's what the opposition have been speaking about today, is customers of insurance companies, people who are effectively being gouged, people who they're not lazy. They have time constraints. They may lack the capacity to be able to do the shopping around that you say is so important. They may not have access to the internet. They might find it very frustrating to spend an hour or more on the phone, or they may simply believe that the insurance companies should be regulated to the point that this practice of dual pricing is simply not allowed. But unfortunately, when you came in, your concern was only for insurance companies. They seem to be doing quite well, actually. It's the consumers at the business end of this that are being effectively ripped off, and we need to end the insurance rip-off. So, as I've said, Minister, my own constituency in North County Dublin, there are many areas that are not well served by public transport. Young people, people with young families, they have no choice. They have to have a car to get around. They simply lack the infrastructure to be able to live their daily lives. They are extremely busy. They are not lazy, they are not stupid, they just do not have the time to be able to compare prices and shop around and do all of that. They need this regulation so that they are not at the mercy of the insurance companies that you were, when you came in here, so very, very concerned about. What they want is fairness. They want to know when they're taking out an insurance policy that it will be fair. They want to know that they will get a good price without having to spend hours and hours and hours and hours trying to outwit the algorithms used by the insurance companies. They want to know that they will get a fair price, and that's what Dr. Doherty has sought to do here today. That's what everyone has spoken about, fairness for consumers. And it's very regrettable that when you spoke only about fairness for big multinationals and big insurance companies. Gor Maigat.
McCarthy.
Orla,
The good news is that this bill to ban dual practice by insurance companies will be passed. The bad news is that rather than allowing the bill to proceed quickly to the next stage, the government have instead delayed that passage by 9 months. But the fact that the government didn't oppose this legislation outright is a testament to those that have highlighted the insurance rip-off that exists in this country. And I want to commend all of those motorists, homeowners, business people, childcare managers, community groups and others who have publicly told their stories of despicable practices and unjustified premium hikes by the insurance industry. And I want to thank all of those people who contacted their government TDs asking them to support this week's bill to ban dual pricing. Without their efforts, I am firmly of the view that government would have undoubtedly voted against this entirely today. Because anyone listening to the Minister would hear somebody who's wedded to the status quo, happy to allow insurance companies to continue fleecing their customers, someone who had to be kicking and screaming to the point that we're at today. Above all, I want to commend Pearse Doherty, who has done more than any other single person in exposing the price gouging, the uncompetitive and downright reprehensible activities of the insurance industry, and also highlighted the inactivity that has verged on the outright complicity of successive Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments. Without Pearse Doherty's efforts, we would not have had the spotlight shone on those practices that have been such a burden on ordinary workers, families and businesses. Without his tenacity, we would not know, and therefore government would not have tackled the lengths that insurance companies will go to squeeze every last cent from their customers. Without Pearse Doherty, I think it's fair to say that many people wouldn't even know what dual pricing means, let alone be part of this campaign to outlaw it. Dual pricing, let's remind ourselves, is the mechanism that insurance companies use to fleece their most loyal customers, who are often their most vulnerable customers. This practice will be banned because of Deputy Doherty's efforts and because of all of those people who got behind this campaign. The government might be able to delay progress, but they will not, absolutely will not, stop it. I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you very much, Deputy Doherty. And I want to thank all of the 26 speakers who spoke on this legislation so far and those who offered their support outside of the government speakers who are attempting to delay this legislation, and for those of the speakers who mentioned me particularly. Look, this legislation is about fairness. I want to deal with some of the issues maybe that was put forward by government spokespersons there in their rebuttal. To Minister Donoghue, I would say you're a year behind the time. You need to catch up. What the FCA are doing is not completing their consultation next year, but actually they have completed it on the 25th of January this year. They are going to announce their final price remedy, in the second quarter of this year, not next year, and that will come into effect 4 months from the date of the announcement. That is this year, at the latest October, and not next year. This will be the third round of consultation. The first report that they didn't seek to ban the practice. The second, after the consultation with the industry, they found that the industry wouldn't go far enough, and they say that there is nothing but to ban it. So now they're looking at the tweaks in relation to the implementation of the ban and not the ban itself. So it will be banned in Newry, it will be banned in Strabane, it will be banned in Belfast later on this year. But here in this state, our Parliament, or at least our Government, are happy to allow insurance companies to facilitate this price gouging. In relation to his second issue, his issue in terms of discounts, this legislation does allow for discounts. Minister Sean Fleming made the same claim, and it is deeply regrettable that you do not understand the issue in terms of the legislation. So, for example, Section 3 of the bill provides that rating factors cannot be used that are unrelated to risk, save for the addition of business expenses. Now, what are business expenses? They're defined in Section 4 of the bill, and the definition is actually lifted from the Central Bank National Information Claims Database Act of 2018, and it says that these business expenses provide for commissions and acquisition costs in acquiring new policies, which can include discounts. Dual policies, whether it's home or motor insurance, can also continue to exist where there's discounts there, as long as they are also provided to new customers and not to renewing customers and not just new customers. So your arguments are falling flat. You talk about the issue in terms of new providers, Again, put the evidence to you from the Financial Conduct Authority. And why is it important? Because it's a different jurisdiction. And how is it relevant to here? Of course it's relevant, because actually the Central Bank and the FCA found the same thing in terms of the overcharging of motorists and homeowners in relation to this practice. Why did they find the same thing? Because most of the companies operate in both markets. And what did the FCA find when they looked at 17 million different parts of policies across 6 million unique policy documents? They found actually this is going to increase competition. Now, how does that work? It works like this because insurance companies like Allianz, Aviva and Liberty and all that, they have a huge amount of data based on you. They have their pricing models based on how likely is it that customer A and B will stay with my company, or how likely is it that they will shop around? And if they're likely to stay with all the information they've gathered on you over the years and information that they can purchase on you, then they push up the premium to exorbitant levels. A new entrant can compete with that. That is why there is a European investigation in relation to data sharing by the industry here in Ireland. They were raided. They have been called a cartel. There was dawn raids on the industry because they are operating like a cartel. So by level the playing field, you actually increase competition, but don't take my word for it. Take the FCA, who have looked at this issue right across the same insurance companies that are operating here. The Minister also said that this would impact in relation to childcare settings and providers in terms of businesses that aren't covering more. The legislation doesn't deal with that. The legislation deals with motor insurance and home insurance. So please read the legislation and understand the legislation. In relation to Minister Fleming, he said in all the scripts that he heard today, they did not deal with the issue of differential pricing. Every speaker spoke about dual pricing and omitted to talk about differential pricing. He went on to say that that isn't what the legislation is about. I drafted the legislation. The Central Bank report, which we're waiting for, it was commissioned at my request. Sean Fleming never raised this issue, and neither did you, Minister, for years, despite your positions that you've had. The reality is, and this is where Sean Fleming should stick, or Minister Fleming should stick to his script, because this was unscripted. Dual pricing is a form of differential pricing. Don't take my word for it. Look at the Central Bank's report. Maybe read it. That is what we're doing. We are restricting differential pricing by banning dual pricing. What does it do? For 77% of customers who renew in home insurance and 67% in terms of motor insurance, it puts money back into their pockets. The FCA have estimated that this will benefit between €4.5 billion and €12 billion over the course of a decade, putting money into people's pockets, increasing competition, increasing transparency. Now, I've already introduced a piece of legislation and I worked with government on it, but you have delayed it for 2 years.
Okay,
you are pulling the same stroke here by delaying this important piece of legislation. So I would ask you to drop the delay to allow us to proceed in committee in terms of some of the preparatory work that is needed. And I would appeal to people and I'll finish on this, who is watching this. The government may try and delay us, but they are not going to stop us.
Right.
And in the meantime, do not accept your insurance renewal quote. Shop around, because they are fleecing you. And until time that we get the better of the government in relation to this here, and until time that this is banned, you are vulnerable to these exploitative practices.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Right, insurance restriction on differential